Welcome. Welcome everyone today to our webinar on planning with a purpose, embedding strategy into every step. We are excited to engage in this conversation today. As we move forward into this, would like to do some introductions. We have with us on the call today Dr. Nicole Reeves. She is Senior Director with Cognia. She will be supporting and leading this conversation, but we're also honored to have representatives from Forest Municipal Schools. We have Dr. Melanie Nelson, Dr. Marcus Holbert, and Tyresia Love that will be joining us. And at the end of our conversation today, we'll have Amy McVey, the Vice President of Solutions for Cognia, will be helping to wrap us up. Before we begin our time, I do want to put some housekeeping there for us. We have Q&A and chat are both open. If you have questions as the conversation evolves today, please put those into the Q&A. We will monitor those and try to answer those throughout the time together. Also, if you have comments that you just want to make about what you're hearing, please also feel free to use chat for that. We'll also be monitoring those components. At the end of our session today, you'll receive a survey, so please make sure that you provide feedback. We would love to hear your thoughts about today's webinar. All right. As we begin, we want to root ourselves in a mission and vision, which is why we're here today. Right. Our vision is to impact and inspire education providers to advance and enable pathways for success for all learners. And so we want to open by sharing this because it's essential to who we are and why we're here to support you in your continuous improvement journey. We are a partner in your work, and so we want to make sure that we are helping you support your students as they learn and grow. So as we navigate this, we want to make sure that we are supporting our mission and vision because it guides everything that we do, and hopefully you will hear that shine through brightly today in our conversation. So with that, what I'd like to do is turn it over to Dr. Nicole Reeves as she begins to facilitate our conversation. Dr. Reeves?
Thank you so much, Greg. And thank you, everyone, for being here today. We did ask 3 questions when you registered to ascertain what you might already have in place at your sites. We want to use that as a starting off point for our work here today. I'm going to provide an overview of the process, but perhaps more important than the process itself is that you have organizational processes and practices that can support the implementation of any improvement work. That is why we chose these 3 questions to begin. Many of you from your responses are already doing great things such as using or engaging multiple stakeholders, people, or perspectives to participate in the improvement planning process. Many of you have leadership teams, although they might be organized in a different way or have different folks on there. Many of you have them in place, and they play a huge role in improvement practices. And then some of you, based on those responses, already utilize multiple avenues of communication to share your improvement plans with others. What I'd like to do, however, is look at each question separately just for a second, and your responses a little bit more in depth, because we need to drive a point that across the point that operational processes must be in place. So when we looked at that first question, your responses to the first questions, many respondents listed a group of stakeholders or leadership teams, and many individuals listed that me or myself or naming one person or one person's role was who led or co-led the improvement planning process. Improvement planning is huge. It's a huge undertaking, and therefore a best known practice for improvement planning requires that multiple stakeholders participate with and work with school leadership or system leadership to benefit from broadened perspectives and make sure that every angle and avenue is addressed. It helps to have other people's eyes and ears to gain insight on what areas of strength and what areas of challenge need to be addressed. So when we look at these other responses in the leadership teams, many of you talked about different leadership team structures. Some of you said collaborative models. Some of you said that boards or higher education corporate models were responsible, depending on your school structure. And Right now, I want to, whatever you were using, the point I want to drive here is please don't try to do things by yourself. You can invite students, teachers, parents, other staff on the campus to just help you look through, analyze, and organize data and make some decisions so that you're not the only one solely responsible for this work. Plus, it helps to improve buy-in. When we look at the second question, some of the observations around these responses included that teams were used, leadership teams were often used for coaching or mentorship of teachers, especially newer teachers, and several detailed structured models like a steering committee or some other governing structure. There were several responses denoted that there was no leadership team in place. And one respondent put, I am a department of one. A few respondents kind of expressed their confusion or uncertainty about what a leadership team is. And we're going to talk about that in just a little bit because that's going to be critical and crucial to your work and improvement. Perhaps the best response, one of the best responses to this question was, we divide and conquer. This is key to any organization and organizational leadership where improvement efforts or operating or school or system are required. Most of the responses in this category included using leadership teams for the 5 areas that are listed here. And all of these are a great way to utilize the leadership team and help individual leaders focus on what matters. And that's making sure that outcomes for students are positive. The last question we had was very interesting as well. In my work with systems across and schools across the country, communication in general, but most importantly, communication of improvement decisions and actions proved to be a challenge in some way, shape, or form. But communication is key to building trust and transparency in any organizational structure. And it is important in creating or maintaining a positive culture or climate. In fact, culture of learning is one of Cognia's 4 key main areas where under which all of the Cognia performance standards are included. And based on your responses, many of you are right on track. You use meetings, emails, and newsletters, websites, and portals, and you even described, you even described the portals that you used. So that's good. Hats off to you. For those of you who have some of these structures in place, you already have much of the work done. It is important to note that many of you did mention that you still need more structure in your communication plan. Without further ado, we're going to build on this and we're going to revisit this when we come back towards the end of this segment. In all of our work, we rely heavily on Cognia performance standards to be foundational to any improvement work that we do. These standards are research-based and help us to see or to know or define what quality schools should be doing and the people within them. Our 3 of the main standards, although there's all of the standards for Cognia improvement fall into strategic thinking and planning if it becomes an area of improvement or growth. But the 3 main standards that we have here are active stakeholder engagement is one of the culture of learning standards. When more people are engaged, there's a lot more buy-in. The second one is standard 7, where leaders involve professional staff members in the continuous improvement process. And then standard 24, where we use a variety of data, sources, and information to help inform decisions. What do we hope to do today? We hope that you will gain an understanding of the 4-step process that Cognia uses in developing strategic thinking, strategic plans. And we hope that when you hear from our guest hosts, you will hear what kind of elements are important in making sure you attain your long-term goals. And that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to go through the process. You will hear from our guest speakers. And then we're going to talk about some things that you may want to do or first steps in ensuring that you can have the pieces in place to set your improvement planning on a positive course. So let's take a look. In Cognia's improvement system, you see right at the heart are the 4 phases of strategic thinking and planning, and that is envisioning, planning, implementing, and evaluating. In my experience, after being in schools for 25 years, many of the schools with whom I've worked, myself included, had no problem in identifying areas of growth, but we often found trouble in implementing with fidelity and or coming back at the end of each year to evaluate and make sure we were on the right path. Hopefully, after today's explanation, you will start to think about what could be put in place to ensure those things happen. Let's take a little dive. Cognia is a little bit different in its improvement planning. We begin with the envisioning phase. I have yet to meet anyone in any school, regardless of the structure, if it's a micro school to a charter school to a public school, a non-public school, that doesn't do the first sub-phase. And that is determine your current reality. All of us in education are required to gather, collect, and report on different data. That data, if we look at it through a very, multiple lenses, when we have different stakeholders looking at the data, we can start to see where we are, what is good, what is not good, and draw information from that data. Once we understand where our strengths lie and what the data are saying, where our strengths lie and where our struggles are, then we can kind of take that and put that off to the side for just a second. The next subphase is where we differ a little. We can never know. We don't have a crystal ball about what the future is going to hold, but we can be much more prepared. And in envisioning or exploring the future, we start to look at future trends from 4 different perspectives. A political perspective, which is not just politics, but legislative in nature or any decision that comes from a governing body. When we look at the future trends of our district, our state, or our federal requirements, or our organizational structure requirements, we start to understand 2 things when we start to explore the future. We know, or we are much more aware of things that can affect the way we facilitate teaching and learning in schools, and we can start to prepare our students for what that future will look like for them. If we are constantly just trying to improve reading or math, which is super critical and important, but it's not the end-all be-all, and none of that is going to improve unless we address the external factors that affect teaching and learning and be much more responsive and less reactive to the future. So by exploring the future politically, economically, socially, and technologically, we can prepare ourselves as educators for making sure that we are ready for that future. Finally, when we see where we are and our areas of improvement and we prioritize which future trends are going to affect us the most, it is in that bringing or combining of current reality data and future trend data that we synthesize the results, and as a result, strategic themes begin to rise to the surface. What areas of improvement do we need to focus on? And at the end of the envisioning phase, we become very clear about those areas of focus that will drive the work in the planning phase. Our planning phase is where we start to take those strategic themes and identify objectives for each one. An objective should be written in our processes. We try to write objectives high level enough that it will last for the life of the strategic plan. We recommend a strategic plan be anywhere from 3 years to 5 years. Longer than that, it's very hard to have a plan that will be responsive to the future trends that are coming because things change so quickly. So if you have a 3-year plan, then you want to write a high-level objective for that area of focus that lasts for the whole 3 years. Under each strategic theme and objective, you will write critical initiatives. And critical initiatives, just to give you an idea, should be written at a level that it'll take you a year to accomplish the intended outcomes that you articulate. That way, you will have several critical initiatives on which to rely and to work on for the next 3 to 5 years, but you prioritize one at a time. I do want to talk about intended outcomes just a little bit. When you identify your critical initiatives, let's say provide professional learning in a particular area of focus, you can prove quite easily and give evidence to the fact that you're providing professional learning. What you can't do is really measure growth or improvement just by providing proof that you did it. So identifying your outcomes, the whole point of professional learning is to improve the capacity of teachers or instructional staff. And you would be able to articulate that, and that becomes what you measure. How much did your staff capacity improve from point A to point B? And if it's a year-long initiative, then it's from the first part of the year to the second part of the year. Once you prioritize which critical initiatives you will address in each year, then that becomes your strategy map and that becomes your annual plan. So your strategy map with all of your objectives for each strategic theme and your critical initiative is your long range plan. Your prioritized critical initiatives are your annual plan. That means you don't have to complete the entire plan all the way through the 3 to 5 years. We used to do that practice. And what ended up happening was none of year 2 went the way we wanted it to. So you flesh out year 1, see how it goes by monitoring progress throughout the year and evaluating at the end of the year. So under this one, you take those prioritized critical initiatives, you create an implementation plan, and this is what is most familiar to all of you. This is when you identify the persons responsible, you create the activities, the activity timelines, find out what resources you need, and how you're going to measure each of those activities to bring you closer to your intended outcome of each critical initiative you prioritize for year 1. You must communicate to those persons responsible what their role is. And going back to our respondents' wording in their response, this is where you divide and conquer. No one person can do it all. You need to invoke and ask and engage others in helping you to achieve and accomplish your improvement goals. Last but not least, this is one of those things that definitely needs to be a structure, and we'll talk about this at the end. You've got to take time during the school year to enact, to implement with fidelity, and monitor progress. I will tell you in personal experience, as a school leader, our annual plans were always beautifully written. We went through the work in the beginning of the year. We were gung-ho, and then life happens. You have to start putting out fires, meeting with teachers and meeting with parents and helping students to get their needs met. And you kind of forget about that improvement plan. But if you have regularly scheduled time to monitor progress towards your improvement goals, then you are much better off so that at the end of the year, when your district or someone else is asking for your progress, you don't have to hurry up and do it in no time flat. And then at the end of the year, you look at each one of those prioritized critical initiatives and you determine the impact for each one at a time. After that is done, you take a look at the plan overall. What worked? What didn't work? And I will tell you, if you're communicating this to your stakeholders, internal and external, I think in my experience, they are less worried about the fact that you didn't reach an intended outcome, but you did explain what you tried and what didn't work and what you plan to do about it in the future. So this evaluation piece is huge. It gives you an opportunity to share your story, to share your efforts, and to share your successes and your plans for year 2. So we always, in all of our professional learning experiences, we always want to make sure that we're making an impact from Cognia. It is a partnership. And you will hear from our friends from Forest Municipal that we did not create their plan for them. We facilitate a process, but the plan is theirs. The data are theirs. The stakeholders are theirs. And the investment is theirs. So we're here as a partner to guide, to help them problem solve. But all of this work is theirs. And when we conducted a study, we found that the schools within a district who implemented the critical initiatives with fidelity found that those schools, their 8th grade students demonstrated significantly higher ELA and math scores on their summative assessments than other schools. So you can read more about our ESSA Level 3 study that gives promising evidence that participating and implementing this process with fidelity can be beneficial to your school as well. Before I hand it off to our friends at Forest Municipal, Greg, do we have any questions or comments in the Q&A or chat?
We do not at this time, Dr. Reeves.
Thank you so much. All right. I would like to hand it over to Dr. Melanie Nelson, who is superintendent at Forest Municipal School District in Mississippi, and I will let her tell her story.
Thank you, Dr. Reeves. So happy to be here. Happy to have a few of my staff members on, Dr. Marcus Holbert, my assistant superintendent, and Miss Tyresia Love. I have someone else near me, but not on the screen. And it's just important that I include them because as a superintendent, we come in having to do many things. I was hired after the school year started and just trying to take off running and catch up. But one of the things that I realized was that our strategic plan was expired by a few years. COVID happened. That is to not say anything wrong about anybody before me, but things just went from there and really not knowing where to start and trying to say, hey, let me give it off to this person. Let me pass it off to this person. And so my federal programs director said, I think we have found a way to budget what we need, and we now need someone to oversee it. So Tyresia Love was very instrumental, along with Dr. Reagan Shoemaker. And I wanted to make sure I mentioned a few things, and I got started without saying this. I am elated that I see people on from all across the United States, but as far as Egypt, Lebanon, and Saudi Arabia, and Nicaragua, I've probably not caught everybody, but just so very thrilled to share this platform with people across the world. So thank you, Cognia, for this opportunity. But I heard someone say, well, we divide and conquer. That's a great way to move. In Forest, we move as a unit. That is critical to me, that we are together and we're moving the right way. And that wasn't just done because I said it, it happened. And I believe that starting with the strategic plan, it was very instrumental in us coming together and moving as a unit. So where you see one, you see all of us. But so beginning with that, I said, hey, we have to have a strategic plan done. So we started to, and I'm going to use the term shop around. We wanted to see, well, what's out there for us? And so Jeremy Stinson was our area representative. And I had to mention his name because what is so critical about him was that when he told the story of Cognia, he almost had me at hello. he really spoke passionately and with conviction about what Cognia could do for our school district. So they embodied everything we had, and here we go. Miss Love took that and ran with it. So the picture that you see in front of us now shows our team coming together. And in that room, you see teachers. I believe that's one of our students up front giving her perspective on things, which was huge to involve them at all levels, elementary, middle, and high school. We have community members in the room. I see our chief financial officer. I see the assistant superintendent, and I am in there. And one of the things that they shared as we went through the process was that they felt valued and heard. They did not feel like this was something that top tier of administration told them to do it, because number one, we couldn't. Without them, we really have no guidance. So our envisioning starts with the ideas of many. And so you see the word providing clarity and unity. Now, to be honest, when I saw unity and I said, oh, we move as a unit, I didn't even plan that. So that's how you know it's authentic. And then inspiring, innovative, big picture thinking, all of that happened. The energy was in the room. So I like to enter a room, a school, a building, a grocery store, and it has to hug me. I have to get that positive energy. And so I want to go back to Jeremy Stinson. That's what he brought, talking about what Cognia could do and assisting us in the process. And then when Cheryl came in along with Dr. Reeves, so they are setting the tone with all of their employees to help us tell our story. I see my assistant superintendent head nodding because they can validate what I'm saying. And then set the tone for a lasting impact. So out of everything that we were doing, that's what was going on. Now, this is another of my favorite slides. But you see that we're in tune. You can see Dr. Reeves listening, just really being up close and personal. You see the papers on the table, Dr. Holbert there. But on the screens, you can see where we're building in the information that we want to come out of our strategic plan. Now, the picture where it shows me in the blue jacket, and that's how you know me, all the hair. I'm the big hair lady. But I'm speaking with a student, and then that's our other student there. But our lady in the gray jacket, she is a grandmother, and grandparents are critical to what we have going in this area in many districts. And she made sure that we were doing justice by her by not speaking over her head. Educators like to talk in acronyms. We want to say ESSER. We want to say MTSS for interventions. Even within our district, we have Pathways to Success Academy that we call PSA. But she made us accountable for the things that we were saying and doing. She had no problem going toe to toe with Dr. Holbert. And while you can only see him sitting, he stands pretty tall. And she did not mind letting him know how she felt, up to and including me. So getting those people from the community in here was critical because she is important in her church. And that means she is a loud voice for us, not loud to be rude in any sense, but loud meaning powerful, strong, and positive. And several things that she came to the table with, she quickly changed how she felt, and she saw where she fit into the plan. And then she could hold her grandchildren accountable and other children as well. So that picture tells a big story. With our focus groups, and I was a little afraid of this. I'm going to pause a minute and I'm going to turn it over to Miss Love to talk about the focus groups and how important it was for her to design them and be intentional with design. Miss Love?
Good afternoon, and thanks again to Cognia for allowing us to participate in today's webinar. So to continue with what Dr. Nelson has already stated, a part of the process, we were able to gather focus groups. We had in the middle page, you may be able to see it, you may not be able to, but we were able to have a focus group that consisted of our parents and community. We had a separate meeting for them. We also had a focus group consisting of just students only. We had elementary students, we had students from our middle school and high school to participate. And then we also had a focus group that consisted of our teachers and staff. So Cognia developed a set of questions for each focus group to target specific topics and needs and input. And then after we had the focus group meetings, Cognia also gathered the information, the responses from each focus group, and then they were able to produce what you see on the screen, the responses and the findings from our focus group meetings. And again, if you want to know something honestly, ask a child. So our students were very honest. When we met with our parents and community members and our teachers and staff, Dr. Nelson did not participate in those. She wanted everybody to feel comfortable in the room, and she wanted them to feel comfortable in saying whatever they needed to say, and let everyone have that moment. So that was a critical piece in our process.
Thank you, Miss Love. And before we go back one time to that slide. I'm sorry. Miss Love said, that I wanted everyone to feel comfortable. Well, I did, but let me speak honestly. I also wanted them to not say anything that would hurt us. But that's part of what I call stripping down to the root of the problem. So we had to rip the Band-Aid off, but please trust that process. Don't feel like you're trying to control the narrative to get what you want, or you will ruin the whole piece. So thank you for that. Okay, next.
And, I wanted to add to that. Dr. Nelson actually came back on and said what I wanted to say, following up Miss Love. But two things that I wrote down about that experience: it was eye-opening, and you have to have an open mind when you go into strategic planning, when you involved all the external stakeholders, because as administrators, you often tend to think that you have all the problems to the solutions, when in reality, when you go through this process, there are a lot of more problems than you think exist. So you going through the process, you have to have an open mind and not get your feelings involved.
Thank you, Dr. Holbert. All right. So communicating our plan, we have totally embraced what we have gone through because we gave it time, energy, and money. That's a lot of things that you do from one human to the other. And when you give it that, and we gave it love, when you do that, you're ready to tell the story. So we did have our school board presentation. We want them to know what we're planning to do to ensure them that we're leading not only the children of this community in the right direction, but the parents and other community members. That was huge. So we want them to know what we're doing. Yes, we're putting it on our website. We're going to have quarterly reports. I shared that today is new teacher orientation. That was the first thing that we opened with, our organizational chart and our strategic plan. And I shared with them, this is a living document as we move through it. We talked about how we're communicating in year one. And because it was the first time we presented it to new teachers, I think we pretty much visit this every day, up to and including branding. You will see our backgrounds and you see the water tank behind us. The news station that we receive our information from is about 40 miles from here. But in their commercial, they spotlight forest. And I was writing, I said, oh, that's the water tower. So if people are watching the news and they see the water tower, then here it is on our strategic plan, along with what we believe in. So we are still fine tuning it as we speak. But Dr. Reeves mentioned communicating that year one process. You don't have to eat the whole elephant. We have time, more than 5 years, because it is a growing document. Things that we can check off, things that we can add to. But then looking at our critical initiatives after we do year one to see what we're going to have in year two. But again, moving through that process, as a mother, I feel like we birthed a baby. So this was beautiful for us to have and do as we went through it. Okay. The next piece that we had, we talked about the phases. I'm sorry. Here we go. We're getting to our next thing. My screen is moving. Okay. Our strategy map, output, and what was generated. So this example came from another school district, and those were all the things that we wanted to make sure that we hit. So we did not have to reinvent the wheel with this document, but that was helpful too, because you come in as a blank slate going, well, where do I start? Knowing that you have things to lay out. As you can see, as this example is listed, it's something that you can look at. It's not overwhelming, but it tells the story. So we started, of course, we were able to listen to the input from all to go along with our vision, mission, and our beliefs that are very different from the example. From looking at that, we came up with 3 themes. I love them. Our organizational processes. And before I go through that, I heard Dr. Nicole Reeves state how things operate. I have used the word processes repeatedly since I have been here. So making sure that everyone knows how to move as a unit was huge. Of course, you don't have education without curriculum development, and then ensuring that we have a process in place to look at the quality of our teachers and retain them. So those were our main themes. All right. Here is our beautiful plan. So I won't read everything in it, but I want to share a few things that came out of it. I didn't feel like we had to reinvent the wheel with some things, and you still have to have your catchy slogans and phrases. That part of your branding is crucial in anything you do, whether it's a university here in Mississippi. We have a historically Black college and university, Alcorn, and when you go to the airport, it says always Alcorn. And so those things are important. So when we saw pause, we as a unit decided positively advancing well-rounded scholars, so that when people go out and speak about forest, they know there is no guessing. And so we may just be tightening up our paw print, because again, branding is going to be huge. There are some things that are sacred to the community. Our shield showing Forest Municipal School District in the upper left corner with the bear cat, but mainly listening to what people wanted, not making it my idea. So our vision statement, people search high and low to have a vision statement and what they want, but that is ultimately what we want: empowering learners to become productive members of society. We don't want them in trouble. We don't want them to drop out. We want them to be able to have a life for themselves and be able to give back to their community. And I won't go through all the beliefs, but that first one generated a lot of discussion. And while we didn't want to come off as a self-centered district, we had to embrace the fact that we are the heart of the community. We are a smaller community, but powerful. And so when our football team is thriving, when our opportunities for parents to come in and have parent meetings and different sessions. That is important. We have the highest English language learner population in the state. We proudly tout that we are 51% Hispanic populated students, and about 42% of those are English language learners. So we are proud of being the heart of the community. The other standards are pretty simple or aligned with others, but those things are crucial. Again, might seem like just a small piece, but we took a lot of time looking at our skeleton and seeing what puts meat on our bones. The other thing, go back one more time and then I'll move forward. The other piece is the objective. There's a word in there, if you'll pay attention to about the third line. When we were putting all of this together, our child nutrition person came in and she was looking at everything on the wall and she pulled me to the side and she said, Dr. Nelson, where do we fit in? And I about had a panic attack, but she was right. So while it may seem like we're trying to list everybody, it was important for them to say, that's where I fit in. I go here, I go there. So we with intentionality, developed the objective. So you'll see child nutrition, transportation, maintenance, technology, medical, safety, and activities. And so that's our big word because we are big with athletics, but just as big with activities, even going down to the elementary school. So we are proud of this living document. Okay. All right. So student engagement, these critical initiatives. When we were looking at it, we wanted to make sure that we were focusing on the best practices, the positive relationships. So a lot of the things that we have, you'll see what the initiative is. You see the start date. So those are the things that we're going to tackle immediately. And this, I believe, is just another example. Am I correct? So, Nicole, I'm going to turn it back over to you because I can carry Cognia. Thank you, Dr. Reeves.
So, at this point, there's still, I know we just finished work with their implementation part of the plan. And I wanted to show you that once you have a strategy map, our platform does create outputs, and you can, and I put that in the chat. You can tailor your outputs and brand them to your thing, just like they branded theirs to their colors and their site. Everybody that I have worked with has done it differently, and I've had some school districts that use our outputs as is. This is an example of when you prioritize a critical initiative, you can share, just like in this, using that strategy map, you can share that strategy map quite easily. It's on one page. It doesn't have to have all of the details to all of your stakeholders internally or externally. They want to know, what are you about in your vision, mission, and beliefs? What do you hope to accomplish? And for Forest Municipal, it was these three areas. Those were their strategic themes, their high-level objectives that are going to last the life of the plan, the 5 years, and then the critical initiatives underneath. And then they prioritize which ones will be addressed in year one. The resulting output of that year one is what we call an annual improvement plan that lists the strategic theme, the objective, and the critical initiatives that will be addressed. When we worked with them earlier this summer, or right at the end of the school year, as a matter of fact, so they could have everything in place, they started to create their implementation plan. And we use lots of different tools to help them all work together. And this was one of an example of their implementation plan template that they started to flesh out the activities and the things that they would do this year. So I don't know if Dr. Love or Dr. Holbert or Dr. Nelson, if you guys would like to talk about this at all.
I can if you want me to.
Sure. I think it would just help them to understand what you guys kind of went through during this process.
Okay. So when we made it to this point in the process, the implementation phase, we had a team of people for every strategic theme. So the example that you see here on the screen is from our teacher quality team. That's one of our strategic themes. And so together they were able to come up with critical initiatives. And again, Cognia did such a wonderful job of facilitating throughout the process to make sure we didn't overwhelm ourselves. So even though we came up with multiple critical initiatives, we narrowed it down and chose one or two from each strategic theme to focus on for year one. So the example that you see here on the screen, this is one of the critical initiatives that we're going to focus on for year one, and it's structure a system of support for all teachers. So once you decide what critical initiative you're going to focus on, you develop activities. You decide who's going to be responsible for each activity that goes with that critical initiative. We even talked about the resources that will be needed or required to get the activity completed. We also talked about what would be a good date to start working or implementing the critical initiative activity. And then we set benchmark dates throughout the process, where we just kind of stop and say, okay, where are we now? What's needed? How far have we come? Do we need to go back and address something? Did we leave out something? Just, periods of time to stop and refocus, or just reevaluate where we are in that activity. And then also we set target dates for each critical initiative to either be complete, each activity to be complete, or where we could come back and revisit once again. So again, this part of the process was very important because like we say, it helped us to get to the nitty-gritty part.
Right. And I'll add to that, going back to what I said earlier, eye-opening and open-minded, because at first, as a admin staff or upper administration, when you hear discipline is an issue or whatever, as administrators, you often think, but teachers, they always complain about discipline and that they want every kid crucified or expelled for the year. But after digging deeper into this process, it wasn't necessarily the discipline, it was the follow through. And then from school to school, the discipline procedures may change different. So again, I'm going to go back just using this part right here from an administrative standpoint. When you sit in the room, you hear parents, you hear teachers, you hear students, you get a perspectives from different stakeholders that may be different from yours, from your administrative world. That's the reason I say when you go through this process, you have to be open-minded. And initially, before we started talking about strategic planning, I made a statement to Dr. Nelson. I said, well, we could just do our own strategic planning. And after going back through the process, I am so glad and thankful we did it this way, because if you just have a perspective of one, then you're going to miss the boat for your whole district that's being inclusive, so that you can hit those targets and come up with those things, and then take your theme and acquire use it for just your planning for the next 5 years. And if it doesn't align to your strategic plan, then you probably don't need to do it.
Thank you, Dr. Holbert. We just got a message in the chat. So Dr. Nelson, if you want to talk about this, and then I will keep talking about the implementation part and what comes out of that, of the platform. But someone asked if your strategic plan was created after your accreditation process. So can you share where you are in the accreditation process?
Our plan was created first, so to speak. I believe it's going to help us because we're now ready to start looking to tackle accreditation. But we can have different ways. You can be accredited by the state. So I kept saying, we're an accredited school. We're an accredited school. But we have to go through that process next. It was important for us to get started on this now, to have that vehicle to move us along. And I believe that with this in place, we'll be ready to conquer the other. If someone else did it the other way, it may have worked for them. I only know what has happened for us because our strategic plan was out of date. So that's the way we did it. And I did see the question. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Nelson. And just for you to know, it doesn't matter. Every district comes to us at a different point. So there was a district that I have worked with that asked us to come in after their accreditation review, and then they created a plan because they wanted to streamline organizational processes. Whether you do it before, during, or after, it's just whatever time is right for you, because it is truly customized. And the reason why we want to show you, even though you can see the columns have the words kind of jumbled together, we want to show you there's actual working document, and the amount of work that goes on versus what shows up on an output is probably 4 or 5 times the amount of work to the output. The output is simply what comes out of all of those discussions. And what Miss Love was trying to explain too was we had the whole strategic planning or group, which was probably 40 or so people. And we facilitate that envisioning and that planning process. And then when we've got to implementing, that's when each group met individually and started to create the implementation plan. But they still have to come together in, whether it's virtual or in person, and share with all the groups and get feedback from each other before it is implemented, which is why they don't have their implementation part quite ready. They're right in the middle of it, getting ready to implement this fall. Once they put all of the information into our platform, you get an output that looks like this. It shows the strategic theme, the critical initiative, the objective, and then it even goes on to list all of the required resources. This example does not show you the benchmarks and target dates, but when you complete the benchmarks and target dates, many of our school systems will put a 30, 60, 90, so they work on it quarterly. So at the end of 30 days, this is what they want to accomplish, and that's what's listed in the benchmark. At the end of 60 days, so they know when they are monitoring progress, which I recommend is quarterly, then that is much easier for them to gauge how far or how much they've accomplished and getting closer to reaching the intended outcome of their critical initiative. And that is called the annual implementation plan. Someone else said, can you share a link to the school or district's plan on the previous slide? Just to let you guys know, you will get a recording of this session in addition to a PDF of the slide deck. So you will have, you'll be able to look at their examples and you can enjoy the activities. Also, I want to kind of turn it over to Dr. Nelson again, because I want her to share some, Dr. Holbert just explained some of his aha moments. He thought he could do it by himself, and I'll let Dr. Nelson kind of share what her aha moments were.
Thank you, Dr. Reeves. And this is perfect as she lets me go into it, because she did what I call checking me. She probably didn't even know she did it, and it was warranted. So Dr. Holbert's, so in my district, I said, hey, everything in Forest rains Skittles. I want everything to be positive. Skittles taste good. They look good. So I get very defensive if it doesn't seem positive. But what I was taking as negative was truth. And what Dr. Reeves was helping me understand is that your teachers aren't saying they don't want to handle discipline. They're saying they need more support, Dr. Nelson. They need it to be more streamlined going from one building to the next. And so she kept talking me through it and holding my hand. And so that was huge. And so then we could see exactly what Dr. Holbert was saying about what we needed. So So they listed out the things that we have said about how our perspective changed, but also our teachers and our students, and remember the grandparent. And and then the listening. I had to listen to her. She listened to me, and it was crucial. But Cognia held our hand through it, and they're still with us and watching the outcome. So it wasn't one and done. It is just that continuous support and making sure that we're staying true to what we're saying we're going to do. So those were great moments. Gloves were off, and Dr. Reeves got me right back on track. Is this for me? Is this one mine?
Yes, ma'am, I think it is.
Okay. So in this, one of the things that they were saying was that it was important when they saw the superintendent there. I was there at just about every meeting. Dr. Holbert was there, my staff. So that was huge. Don't pass it off and give it to someone like you're checking a box. Invest your time in it. So with me being there, that made community members say, we're going to be there too. So that being visible and showing that this is important. And again, remember what I said, we move as a unit. And so that continuous implementation process to monitor and evaluate us being there and referring back to the document helps so much with accountability. And it's going to drive everything. If you could have been in our district today for new teachers, we have all said you could feel the energy. It is amazing. Very grateful.
Thank you, Dr. Nelson. This is one of those things that I wanted to highlight just a little bit. When we think about using leadership teams, this helps and when we facilitate the process, we help folks to understand what their role is. So even in people who participated in the focus group, their role was to supply information and help to give the district leadership the data and information they needed to be well informed in decisions. So this process does allow everybody to understand what their role is. While district leadership is responsible to lead this, and then that's clearly stated in Cognia's standards, it doesn't mean they have to do every single thing. You are in engaging other people in this process, you're also building the future leaders of your community because they will understand how to, and we help, and we do that professional learning to teach them to analyze data, to synthesize information, to come up, to speak even in public. I mean, we had young students who just were not hesitant to come up, and if they were, they felt more empowered as time went along. When another output that's part of this whole process is one of my favorites, and it's the theory of action. This output in the evaluation phase, of which, of course, Forest Municipal is not there yet, but at the end of this year, we will be able to put each critical initiative in view of the whole strategic planning committee or the strategic theme leaders and co-leaders, however they choose to organize that part of the process. We'll do that collaboratively. But you can see the critical initiative is in the square in the center, always framed by a vision and mission. But if you start at the critical initiative and go 2 lines down, you are constantly reminded of what you intended to accomplish. That was your intended outcome. That keeps you focused on what you wanted to accomplish and doesn't allow the conversation to stray from the initial focus. And then you go right in between the critical initiative and the intended outcomes, and you can pull those data sources that will help you see the level or degree to which you achieved your intended outcome. So if it was teacher surveys or classroom observation data, that's the data you will use to compare from point A to point B. And you keep the conversation focused on what matters. So this is a very important output, and we call that the theory of action. Some of you have asked about where do we find the resources for strategic thinking and planning. I will tell you, we have an in-focus guide for strategic thinking. This guide is very important. This guide can help folks who are not used to a leadership team, to know how to pull a leadership team together. And we are in the midst of updating it with some more recent information, but the process is the same. What do you do in phase one? What are the main tasks to accomplish? What are the questions you should ask yourselves? So it helps every leadership team go step by step through this process. That In Focus guide is found in its entirety in the platform. It's also found in your school resources that you might have access to is our network resources. But if you are a member, when you log into the Cognia Improvement platform, you will select strategies, and in there is resources, and the In Focus guide is there to be downloaded in its entirety. Or as you go through the process in the platform itself, it tells you what to do every step of the way, and you can download just that part of the In Focus guide. I'm going to, at the end of this, in just a second, I'm going to turn it over to Amy McVey, and Amy's going to talk about how we can support you if you want us to go and help facilitate the process. But if you want to try and dig into it yourself, you certainly can. Now, there's a few things I want you to think about. We're right at the end, and we're going to share this slide deck with you. I want you to think and reflect on some of these things that we have discussed. Also, I want you to look at those practices that if you implement these practices as a leadership team, you will be able to implement any improvement plan with fidelity and with a great deal of success. In addition to any success you find with your critical initiatives, there are additional impacts and outcomes that you see here. The improved culture and climate, development of other leaders, an improvement plan that is very focused, and we will share that with you in the slide. What we would like you to do is think about, and you can type it in the chat while Amy is talking, what needs to change in your institution? What's the first thing you would like to do when you go back to your site after this session? If it's to create a leadership team, then so be it. If it's to decide a timeline, then so be it. Amy, I'm going to turn it over to you. Please make sure you're typing your questions. Even if we don't have time to answer them in this recording, we will answer them in the follow-ups.
Thanks, Nicole. I just get excited every time I hear this, and especially when I hear schools talk about all the successes and that everything that's happened and the excitement around strategic thinking and planning. So as Nicole shared with you as members, you have access to everything that we talked about today. You have access to the In Focus guide and the platform and each stage and how to walk through that. But we do also provide facilitation. So if you say, you know what, I want somebody to come help us, whether it's just help you with the process and turn it over to your leaders or be there every step of the way, Cognia would love to do that. So my name is on the next slide, I believe, but I also put my email in the chat. So if you're welcome to reach out to me. After the webinar, we will share with you the recording and the slide deck. It will come from me. So you can respond to that email. You'll have a scheduling link. If you want to go ahead, I know somebody said, how do I sign up to talk to somebody today? Just reach out and we will get you started with a conversation, because as we've said all along the way, this is a process that's different for every school and district. And we really pride ourselves in supporting you as a thought partner and coming alongside of you and making this a custom opportunity for success for your kids. So thanks, and let us know if you have any questions. It was great talking with you all today. And also thank you to Forest Municipal. We really appreciate them sharing their story today. If you don't get excited when you hear them talking, I think it's time for you to get back to school. Summer vacation's over, because they made me super excited today. Have a great day. Thank you all.
Thank you, Amy. And I will add Miss Love and Dr. Showmaker's information too. So if you want to just call and get a personal, how was it? What was your challenge? What were your challenges and what were your successes? We will include that information as well. That is our presentation. I know I kind of rushed through the end, but just know we are here for you to answer any questions. So you can call us without fear of having to engage right away. If you want to just process this and think it through, we're happy to do that with you too. And Amy's excellent at that. Greg and I are both available to you, and I'm sure the rest of our team. So at this time, thank you so much for all that you guys do for students in the schools. And we wish you the best start of the school year here in the States and continued success for you all and your students. Have a great day.